calling all instructional coaches, curriculum specialists, teachers on special assignment, or whatever they call you. I'm Matteo Souza.
And I'm Katie Ritter. As instructional coaches, we are often responsible for our own professional learning and can sometimes feel pretty isolated in our role.
That's why we're here, bridging the gap with a wealth of tips, tricks, and building a community of coaches.
So hit the restart button with us.
Recharge your coaching batteries.
And hopefully you'll leave feeling just a little bit less on your own coaching island.
Welcome back to Season 4 of Restart Recharge. We are back for another season, and today we will be diving into the dynamic world of bite-sized learning in K-12 education. As instructional coaches, staying abreast of innovative teaching strategies is paramount. In this episode, we're unpacking the essence of bite-sized learning, exploring its profound impact on both student learning and teacher professional development. We're sharing practical insights, success stories, and invaluable tools to help you seamlessly integrate bite-sized learning into your educational practices. Whether you are new to this concept or looking to refine your approach, join us as we navigate the nuances of bite-sized learning, ensuring that every minute of learning is both engaging and impactful. Today, we're thrilled to have Tom Burton with us, the esteemed CEO of We Empower LLC and former superintendent of Princeton City Schools, as our guests. With a storied 36-year career in education, Tom is celebrated for his dynamic leadership and unwavering commitment to student empowerment and teacher development. His accolades include the Innovative Superintendent Award and the honor of Tom Burton Days in Ohio, highlight his profound impact on education. As a passionate advocate for equitable education and a respected national speaker, Tom brings invaluable insights into the transformative power of bite-sized learning in K-12 education. We're honored to have you with us today.
Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, I have to get that guy. I don't even know who you're talking about. That sounded pretty good. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Hey, I'm super excited to be here and delve into this really important concept of bite-sized learning. I think sometimes we take big chunks and we make some mistakes along the way, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you as this is our fourth season, right, Matthias? Yeah, so you're the first episode of our fourth season that we're getting started. And so just to give you just really quick background of some of the conversations we've been having on the pod and any first-time listeners that are joining us for season 4, we kind of wrapped up season 3 with some conversations around how coaches seem to be struggling with providing and finding time for professional development lately, with kind of teacher burnout and teachers just being overwhelmed with what's on their plate right now. Little in-service time, tips and tricks that used to work really well for finding time for PD just doesn't seem to be landing the same. So we kind of wrapped up season 3, just sort of challenging our listeners to think about really reinventing PD almost and finding new ways that are going to work for our adult learners with the all of the stressors and the workload around them. What do we need to do differently so that we can continue to provide these great opportunities? So that's where we thought this episode with you, Tom, might be a great way to kick off season 4, because we know, just kind of shameless plug for us here at Forward Edge, but we know we've worked very closely with Tom when he was superintendent at Princeton City Schools. And so we know that you just did some really transformational, wonderful things at that district. One of them being partnering with us to bring our micro-credentialing program Edu Badges. But I do just want to say this episode is not to sell that program. It's to talk about the concept behind it. So whether somebody's looking at our program or doing their own in their school, I think there's some really great tips and nuggets that they'll be able to get from your wisdom and your experience with micro-credentialing and this concept of bite-sized learning for teachers. So I'll kind of kick it off first. And before we dive in specifically to the bite-sized learning or the micro-credentials, Tom, I think just your perspective speaking around the country and working with administrators all over the country, I'd love to just kind of tap into that wisdom a little bit. And what conversations have you had, or what trends are you seeing around the shifts in PD and in these changing needs of our teachers?
Sure. Well, and again, I so appreciate this really kind of focused work with instructional coaches. I think that sometimes as superintendents, we certainly have great value for each employee. When you look specifically at instructional coaches, sometimes we let them on their own. And so I love the specificity of getting down to the nitty gritty with professional development, not only for instructional coaches, but how they can help deliver that. So that's awesome. So I was just most recently in Long Beach. I was there Friday. I spoke for the great Linwood Unified School District. And while it was a PD day, there's no question, but I did this little exercise that I'd like to do right now with you. Is that okay?
All
Yes,
right.
please.
Yeah. As
All
long as you
right.
don't make
So
us start get up and jumping around doing jumping jacks, because it's hot in this room.
Yeah, that's not the reason you had to
I
do
need
us.
more of a mental
Well,
exercise.
listen, you guys know me. I may do that, but not today. All right. So this is what I'd like to do. I'm going to ask you 3 very quick questions. No matter what question it is, I want the very first thing you think about to write down. So Katie, if I would say, what car are you thinking about right now, real quick? What car are you thinking about? Tell me.
You want me to say it out loud?
Yep. What car?
Okay, a Porsche Boxster.
Okay, Porsche Boxster. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions. Write it down. Don't share your answers. Okay, you ready? Here we go. What color are you thinking about? What flower are you thinking about? What piece of household furniture? Color, flower, household furniture. Really quick. Hurry up. First thought. Put your pen down, then I know you're done.
Household furniture?
Color, flower, piece of household furniture. Quick. Very first thought.
Done.
Okay, you're done. Mateus, you done?
I think so.
Okay, all right. Did either one of you by chance choose red or blue?
No.
Did either one of you choose rose, tulip, or daisy?
No.
Did either one of you choose couch, love seat, or chair?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so this is what this shows, okay? Now, I did this, I've done this, I don't know, seems like 1,000 times, but for sure over 100 times I've done this. Now, normally what you would see is, well, like for sure I normally get 1 out of 3 for everybody, typically, but there's always this select few of people that, you know, like Mateus, what flower did you choose?
Sunflower.
Sunflower,
Oh,
okay.
that's happy flower this morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Katie, what color did you choose?
Pink. Duh.
Pink, duh, of course.
Signature color.
So when you think about how we traditionally think, like 80% of the people I do this with, this works way better in a bigger crowd, but let me tell you what happened. 80% of the people stood up when I said red or blue. And then another 10% joined them when I said rose, tulip, or daisy. And then about 5% of the last people, they stood up when I said couch, love seat, or chair. It's the way we traditionally think. And we need to think differently. And so the trend that I see is that we're still not thinking differently. We have to get outside our comfort zone and push the way that we traditionally deliver professional development, the way that we traditionally interact with learning in and of itself. And it sounds so easy to say, but it's not easy to do in practice. Like we talk about being innovative, creative, and let's be transformational. We say that, that's what we believe, but our behavior doesn't change. So the biggest trend I see is that our behavior doesn't always match up with what we say we believe in, especially when it comes to professional development, because we don't have enough time in the course of the day, in the course of a month, a semester, a year for professional development. So that time we do have, A, has to be valued differently. And then B, we have to come up with different ways to be able to live on-demand professional development.
I love it.
Yeah, I think
great little quote snippets right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's all kinds of highlights we can take.
Yeah. Awesome.
So you mentioned behavior. Why do you think that is? I mean, we do know the best practices, we do know where to go, but why is it that our behavior is not changing? Do you think we're just stuck in our ways in a sense? Is it because we're hanging on to things that we're comfortable with?
Yeah, so, the comfort level is something that when people get to a certain place, it is hard. There's this great book. It's called Change is Good. You Go First. Everybody loves change until they have to change. So, and the fact of the matter is, I think sometimes we make excuses for ourselves and we say things like, well, it's just easier if you do it this way because then I'll have more time to do other things. But really what happens sometimes when we look at professional development is we actually are our own worst enemies by not looking at structures differently. And an example is this. The very first year when I was at Princeton, we had a professional development day, the very last day of school. The very last day of school. And I remember thinking, boy, we have to do something differently. So why don't we do like a conference? And we'll have the teachers, the experts, deliver professional development. We'll have administrators. We'll bring in some speakers from the outside. And literally, everybody looked at me like I was crazy, which, side note, I am, but for other reasons. So, really kind of toppling the way that we traditionally would do things, we actually put out proposals. We had like 42 sessions by teachers, by administrators, and it was professional development for staff, by staff. And it was very, very different. And what I heard was, we don't have enough time to put it together. People aren't going to do it. Excuse, 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 excuse. And some of them were valid. I don't want to be dismissive, but I do feel like that's the way that we traditionally think. It's just easier, and because it's easier, we're going to do what we've always done. But what I say is, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got, which isn't always good. So if we're not happy with professional development, we need to do things differently and topple the way that we traditionally think.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking of what you did differently, share some of the bright spots, right? So you just shared one, right? Just switching up, when you do the PD and how you do it and who it's for and who's presenting, but share some of the other bright spots. What else worked when you were at Princeton,
Sure.
when you started thinking about, let's do this PD differently?
Sure. And you know what? This is always the time when, I'm blessed to be able to speak around the country. I just told you about being in California. I'm in Florida and Texas and Utah. It's crazy. What an unbelievable opportunity to be able to help people. But when I speak, sometimes I make people a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not really trying to do so. Edu badges, I did not want to do. It was expensive from where we were. Edu badges was something that I'm like, well, can you do this? Can you do that? And as kind of a newer product at that point, that answer was no. So I was like, met with Jeff Langdon, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll consider it or whatever. But man, oh man, when we dug into it, it was unbelievable. And that, I think, it was really transformational for us because it was PD on demand. I talked about that earlier. And being able to have teachers, when they want to learn, be able to learn is a game changer. Look, we learned so much stuff through the pandemic. And sometimes, Mateus, you were like stuck in their ways earlier. I say this, I'm talking specifically about me. Sometimes I was stuck on stupid. I don't know why on earth I didn't just embrace that right away. I should have embraced that because I was always about choice, always about allowing people an opportunity to learn differently, learn uniquely, all that stuff. So EduBadge was major for us and allowed us to be able to, again, not only have this great professional development when they wanted it, but when people were struggling, think about the support that on-demand PD does. I'm struggling right now, and it may be like 9:30 at night. So this is what we normally expect people to do. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll shoot an email out to our PD committee to see if anybody knows where I can get a resource. So I may send it out. While I'm motivated, inspired, I'm ready to go with PD. But yet, if I don't have that way to be able to access that information, I'm taking all that inspiration, all that action I'm getting ready to do, my behavior being different, and we're putting it on the back shelf. We can't do that.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that we did that I know was very, very helpful. And quite frankly, we didn't have enough licenses. And, again, when you talk about traditional thought, I was making excuses.
That's a good point, Tom, about it being there when you're ready and when you have that motivation. Outside, when I'm motivated to clean my closet, which is far and few between, I better do it right then and there because that motivation is going to leave me quick, right?
Absolutely.
And so I make a lot of progress when I'm motivated, but if I'm not ready to go or I'm busy or something else comes up, then that motivation's gone and I don't get to it for another few weeks. So I think that hit home how you said that.
Oh, good.
about, 'cause
Thank
I think
you.
we all are like that, or in one way or another, right? When you're motivated, you're ready, you can go a lot further and be a lot more productive when you're in that right headspace at that moment. So having something available that does provide the choice, I think is a really great point there.
You mentioned that you were a little hesitant about micro-credentialing. What were your, like, exact thoughts that you thought, that made you think maybe that's not the way to go?
Red, rose, and couch. Because it's the traditional way that we think, right? It's going to be another thing for teachers. What about onboarding? What about, I mean, 1,000 different things. Making excuses, just like I told you, right? The teachers weren't going to have enough sessions. People didn't want to do it on the last day. It was all these reasons why not to do Viking University. Again, the way that we traditionally think. So I don't have a really good answer to it. I use money as an excuse. And we do that far too often in education. And the other thing too is, let me be really, really clear. On-demand professional development is critical, but there's a word that I did not say that makes it come alive. But before I do that, let me ask you a question. In this sentence, what is the word that is the biggest problem? He or she, as a teacher, he or she is a poor lecturer when delivering instruction. What one word jumps out at you the most as problematic?
Lecturer?
Is? Because it seems so
Okay.
finite, determined.
Okay. So both great answers and both dreadfully wrong,
Oh god, you
right?
testing us.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been
Yeah, you're
tested
darn
so.
right I'm testing you. I'm flipping
Yeah.
it.
I'm loving.
Monday morning, early.
Hey, let's
So,
go. First one of the year and all that.
I'm,
So here's the thing, gang. We know we've been in lectures that have been so engaging, man, captivating. The story, the conclusion, the how you want to do things differently, and oh my goodness, the learning was exponential. The word was poor. He or she is a great lecturer while delivering instruction. Now you probably want to see what the heck that means, what that looks like. So I say that to say this: on demand quality professional development is critical. And that's what EduBadges is. So when you look at that, like there's so much time and effort. Because I remember when I first got the sample, the trial, I looked at some stuff and didn't go deep enough to see the quality. And after doing that, man, game changer.
Yeah, and I think just for folks who are listening who don't have edu badges, but they're interested in, again, whether it's our program or it's, doing something themselves similar within their district, the kind of core concepts that are in the program. One is teacher choice, right? It's the level of, there's over 270 individual badges that teachers can choose from. They're truly bite-sized. Most of them only take about 45 minutes to an hour for a teacher to complete. Every one of them, after they've learned the skill, it requires that they actually implement it, right? So they're actually going back. The ROI is there for districts from, again, whether it's our program or you're paying your own coaches to develop badges. The ROI is there on the time spent creating the material, because the teachers actually have to go back and use the skills that they've learned. They submit evidence, and then we provide feedback. So there's a real person reviewing every single badge and giving really specific feedback that we talk about in education all the time. How important it is to learning is to receive that feedback within, we do it within 1 to 3 business days. So it's really fast. They get an opportunity to resubmit, so they can, build on that learning if they needed to, if they missed the mark, and they can resubmit to ultimately earn the digital badge that they get that signals that they do in fact have the skill. And then each badge has points where they can earn contact hours or graduate credit. So there's kind of that motivator for our adult learners that they need. We've got a lot of folks who are just intrinsically motivated. They want to get better, but time is precious, right? We none of us have enough time in the day. So if I'm doing something and learning something, if I know that it's going to count toward, my licensure renewal, that's all the more reason for me to invest in learning it and spending the time to do it. So those are really kind of the main core tenets of our program that I think can be extrapolated again. If it's not our program, EduBadges, if you're just looking at an opportunity to bring micro-credentialing to your school, those are the things that we have learned have been, from my perspective, I would say have really contributed to the success of the program. Tom, I don't know if hearing that from my perspective, if there's anything that you would add, disagree with, or change about what I said from your perspective.
Well, not add, not change. I would say this, that I believe it was 1989, so a billion years ago. And Mateus, you did such a nice job of saying a storied career. That was I hadn't heard that before. Certainly a storied career, I guess. So in 1989, or right around there, I remember reading a book. It was maybe early 1990s. I read a book called Crazy Times Call for Crazy Organizations. 1989. And in that book, they talked about this concept: the future belongs to the quick and the dead. If you do not move quickly, you will die. And as a company perspective, so they talked about a whole Kodak, and they talked about a whole bunch of other companies that didn't adjust, that didn't do things differently. So I will say this, that PD, without some type of implementation to see if it actually will match up, will die. So if you value professional development, then you have to come up with some type of mechanism to be able to make it come alive, to have teachers practice. And that is the value, one of the values of EduBadges.
Great. Yeah, that's a good
point.
perspective. Thank you.
We're going to take a really quick break. We're going to give our sponsors a chance to throw something in here, and then we're going to be right back with Tom with a couple more questions.
Looking for a program that reaches all teachers in learning new tools to integrate in their lessons? EduBadges is the answer. Edu is an anytime, anywhere badging program that is designed to take bite-sized tools for instruction and teach teachers how to use them. Edu has received the ISTE Seal of Alignment for educator standards, and each badge in our expanding library is aligned to the ISTE standards and the SAMR model. Learn more about the program that teachers call addicting at forward-edge.net/EduBadges.
And we're back with Tom Burton. We're talking about micro-credentialing and the future of professional development. One question I would have for Tom right now is, we talked a little bit about the highlights of like micro-credentialing and all these things. What kind of advice would you give to someone, maybe a principal or anyone in that direction, that is looking at integrating some sort of micro-credentialing, whether this is a program or whether they want to do it themselves? What advice do you give to someone that is trying to go head on into this?
Thanks so much for that question. Earlier this morning, I had a conversation. We were talking about professional development and a variety of other topics. And I said to the superintendent, you just have to do it. And it was a little bit uncomfortable. You just have to do it. And the thing is, like, what does that actually mean? You just have to do it, right? And it's funny because, the slogan, Nike's slogan, just do it. They didn't say, oh, just try it, right? You have to do it. So what I mean by that is, you could say try it, but no, you have to commit. Commit the fact that professional development today, tomorrow, and in the distant future is critical for the best kids that we know. Our kids need it and deserve it. That is, so if you look at it from that lens, then you're not going to wait. You can't wait to impart great knowledge, to help teachers be able to have this on-demand micro-credentialing where they're going to learn something different, or even if it's just to affirm what they're doing and actually track it, I think is really important. And ultimately, you have to look at it from the student lens. If it's about students, we don't want teachers to delay learning because we don't have this convenient platform. We want it to be like when they're ready, or when we, have this cool little EduBadges challenge or micro-credentialing challenge or whatever the case is, we want to be able to do that. And so whether you start small, or which actually I'd recommend you start smaller and kind of pick a couple teachers and have them try it out, but do it out, not just try it out, but do it out. Actually have them go through the process and actually reflect on it. That's what I would say, Mateus, is that you have to just do it.
That's good. I mean, like really, honestly, you have to commit to it and you got to make the choices and the steps forward. I fully agree with you on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that advice too. I feel like a lot of times we're just kind of dragging our feet and moving really quickly to nowhere and not
Yeah,
making
well,
the
and
changes needed for our
yeah,
kids.
and here, yeah, and here's the thing. I did. Like, I'm not on this podcast 36 years thinking I know everything. I don't. I mean, I know enough to know that I messed up by not having that earlier. I love when people say transformational and innovative. I love when people say that about me because that's the way I want to be seen. Because when you do that, you provide the best quality product for our kids, in my opinion, right? The tried and true is transformation. It is and will always be. But ultimately, man, I made a ton of mistakes through my career by not moving deliberately enough and keeping kids front and center more.
Well, it's good advice for us all to learn from, I think. And I think we all have examples that we could empathize with that sentiment as well. Okay, Tom, we end every episode with top 3 tips. So I'm about to move into that to ask you about
Sure.
your top 3 tips here around this subject. But do you have anything else you want to share or touch on, speak to before we move in to that last question?
I would only say that, look, there's all kinds of different opportunities out there for people to partner with a lot of different products. That's what I always liked about Forward Edge, is that even though we're talking about Edu Badges, it really wasn't Edu Badges. You actually are partnering, and that term is very, very different when you think about it like that, because you actually feel like you have a partner with Forward Edge. You actually feel like it's bigger than just Edu Badges. And that is really critical. So whether you need coaching support or some of these other great services that you guys provide, the reality is you actually are partnering with people who care, who get the fact that it is and will always be about students. So the pathway is never alone with Forward Edge.
Thanks, Tom. That means a lot
That's great.
to all of us here at the organization. Okay, so let's go into our last question then. So will
All
you
right.
put so our we know that you were a superintendent, right? So you have a different perspective than maybe more of the boots on the ground and instructional coaches might. But I would love your perspective as a leader who ultimately cares about the success of, the entire organization. What are maybe your top 3 takeaways or pieces of advice for our listeners, which are instructional coaches, who might be looking to navigate this current PD landscape and might be interested in bringing some sort of micro credentials or on-demand bite-sized learning PD to their teachers?
Sure. Thanks, Katie. There's a Latin term called nos cate ipsum, and that means to know thyself. Nos cate ipsum, to know thyself. I would say that's the very first thing. Know yourself. And what I mean by that is, like, if we say we believe that we want to provide opportunities for teachers to learn, and if you're an instructional coach and you know that you're probably pulled in a lot of different directions. So the tip is to know thyself. And if you know that's the case, then let's go to the second tip. So the second tip is to just do it, right? To get in there and get a little bit muddy or whatever, and take a look at things and just do it and try it out as an end user, not just as an instructional coach, right? So, because obviously that's the beautiful thing. As a superintendent, I could have done Edu Badges. Everybody can do Edu Badges or micro-credentialing in general, right? But I would say that if you know yourself and you know that you need support and help, and if we're honest, we all do, then just do it, right? And then the biggest thing is the reflection piece. And the reflection piece is what we don't spend enough time on. So we should reflect, like, what went good, what went bad, what's different, what's unique, how can we get this in our environment, understanding the nuance that you currently are under. So if you have all these different initiatives, and I say sincerely, if you have all these different initiatives going on, don't do micro-credentialing right now. If you feel like that's going to be the perennial straw, that broke the camel's back, don't do it. Now, you have to ask yourself this question through reflection. If we're doing too much, what can we take away and bring something like this in? So there's two different schools of thought when you wake up every day of your life. Actually, there's only one thing. There's three things that happen, but there's only one good choice, right? You get better, you get worse, you stay the same each and every day of your life. So I say just choose better every day, right? That should make sense. But the other thing is, I know a lot of people when they wake up, they make a to-do list. And if you're like me, the to-do list I could spend all day long writing the darn to-do list and not actually do anything, right? But I think there's another concept too that we have to be really honest with each other in education. We need to look at what we do, what we're implementing, and have a stop doing list. Because everything is not intertwined. It should be, but again, it's not. So what can we stop doing? And like the master gardener just doesn't keep planting flowers. They pull out the ones that aren't growing as great, right? And they plant new seeds or they plant new bulbs based upon the environment, right? So that's really what we need to do. We need to not be afraid to stop doing certain things, to stop supporting different programs, and look at micro-credentialing as something is what it truly is. Professional development on demand when people want to learn.
I like that. And I do this all the time. I say it's the last question, but then someone says in their top 3 tips makes me think of another quick thing. So real quick, because I know you're busy and you've got to get on your way to your next thing too. But I think we'd be remiss and it'd be a lost opportunity if we didn't ask you, given that our listener, our audience, our coaches, very often not in that decision-making role, right? They're in that recommendation role to leaders such as yourself or other folks who are on more of a district level administrative team. So if our listeners are listening to this episode, they're believers, they want to either start a micro-credentialing, they want to bring a micro-credentialing program to their district, no matter what, they may need to bring it up to a leader either at the building level or the district level to get their approval. If they're facing someone who maybe doesn't understand or doesn't believe in it initially, do you have any quick thoughts or advice that you might share with our leaders and how they could best approach seeking approval to bring a program like this or start a program like this in their district?
All right. So for everybody who's listening, I want you to grab a pencil or pen. I want you to write down the name of a couple people. Just the first name, right? In case there's anybody around you. Name down who have said something like this. I'm so busy. I have so many things going on. And they have traditional power, if you will, hierarchical. They're above you, if you will. I never looked at that. Like everybody, I like linear hierarchies personally. But sometimes that's not the case. And so when people say that, they spend so much time talking about how busy they are. If they stop talking about how busy they are, they have more time. But that's the reality. The reality is people in leadership positions sometimes view their time as more valuable than your time. So you have to use that to your advantage. Think of a social media post. That's how you have to start the conversation. Teachers want more time. There's only so much time in each day, right? What if we could have some type of program where the teachers could do professional development whenever they'd want it? Ask the question, what if? Not, I got this great program. Oh my goodness. I did this, and that. I went through the program. It's amazing. And you know what? It's like the Snoopy principle. That's all the people are going to hear. I'm sorry. It's just true. Don't make it about you. Make it ultimately about, now I know I mentioned the teachers, right? Because I think that's important. Obviously, if you don't feed the teachers, they'll eat the kids, right? It's a great book I read one time. But the reality is it's about the kids. So keep it about the kids, keep it about the teachers, keep it about the on-demand aspect of it, and short snippets that are attention grabbing, just like you would in a social media post. I think that's the simplest way for me to put it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
That's
that was a great question for people to ask. Thank you for that.
Sure.
All right, Tom, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. And talking with us about micro-credentialing.
We really appreciate your time.
Oh, you got it. And just remember that every day is a choice. Choose better each and every day.
I love that. I'm going to live by that.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. We'll see you later.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you very much. That was great. Thanks for spending time with us today. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with an educator friend.
And connect with us on social media at RRCoachCast to let us know what you thought of the episode and what topics you want us to discuss next.
New episodes drop every other Tuesday. Be sure to subscribe to Restart Recharge wherever you listen to podcasts.
So press the restart button,
recharge your coaching batteries, and leave feeling equipped and inspired to coach fearlessly with the Restart Recharge podcast,
a tech coach collective.
You've given us so many good things to work with and so many great ideas for our listeners. We want to thank you, and we're just excited to have you had on our podcast. Wow,
it's early Monday.
My goodness,
Yeah,
we're just so
early
excited.
Monday. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Tom, thank you so much